part of Double P Media, doublepmedia.com.
Spoiler alert, when this podcast talks about the books of His Dark Materials, it does so in the context of the most recent book. And when it talks about the television show on the BBC and HBO, it does so in the context of the most recent episode. You've been warned.
You're listening to The Dust, a His Dark Materials podcast.
There we go. As soon as my voice clears. Still your 8th favorite podcast covering His Dark Materials, especially Season 3. That's out of about 4 that are actually active. So the math's not so great there still. But we are happy to be here with you. And today we are talking about Season 3, Episode 3, The Intention Craft, written by the showrunner Jack Thorne and directed by Charles Martin. And Season 3, Episode 4, Lyra and Her Death, written by the same, directed by the same. I'm Double M. I'm with you. I'm with Holly, who is Double H, Holly Hunt Pants. And we are here to talk about these episodes. What do you think? Should we just get right into rating these episodes?
Yeah, might as well. This was episode 3 was actually kind of fun, and even parts of episode 4 were fun, but then the end, it just really takes me out. And yeah, it's gonna be a rough week, guys. Sorry. Let's go. Let's do this.
All right. Well, let's do our ratings first. And as you know, as we are part of a Double P media entity, we must use at least doubles, sometimes triples, in terms of rating these episodes. So if you're a catfish, you might try septuples sometimes, but I'm not that ambitious. Do you want to go first or me?
I'll go first.
Okay. Well, what did you rate Season 3, Episode 3, Holly?
I gave it a 7 out of 10 double eyes.
Double eyes?
Indecisive intentions. We have a lot of talk about intentions in this episode with the knife and then the intention craft itself, and then a lot of just indecisiveness going on between Lyra and Will and the debate on what to do with the knife, and Will on whether it even fix the knife and go to Asriel, and Lyra being indecisive. Well, she's actually pretty decisive about the land of the dead, but maybe Pan's not so decisive about that. And then we have Asriel and Marisa, or Marisa. Maybe Asriel's a little indecisive about how to handle her, so he gets all his friends to help decide. And even Marisa herself is a little bit indecisive about like how she wants to go about saving her daughter, whether it's with Team Asriel or she's going to strike out on her own. So that's my rating. I think it's I know it's low for Matt standards, and I don't think it's a bad episode. I just think there's a lot of filler. I mean, it's a lot of not even filler, a lot of move the plot along, move the story along to get us from point A to point B. And my favorite stuff was actually all of the Asriel and Marisa scenes together. I thought that was just fantastic work, fantastic acting by the actors, and I think as far as the story goes, it gives us pieces that we don't get to really see in the books. Them talking about their relationship and their how they feel about being parents. I think it's really great to see that side of it, and that's my rating for episode 3.
We'll put it on the poll. Is it Marisa or Marisa on the poll at the Dust Podcast on Twitter? Because some characters are even changing the way that they pronounce it over the course of these seasons. So I
feel like James McAvoy gives us a new debate every week, because last year it was Stel Maria, but like I don't remember him saying Stel Maria in the early seasons. It was Stel Maria, right? Like I don't know, but it seems to be James McAvoy doesn't pronounce the characters' names, but it's okay.
We'll put that on the poll as well. Does James McAvoy pronounce the characters' names any way he feels like it on any given day? And as for my rating, I don't think I'm going to be quite. I mean, you did an excellent little kind of mini recap and some of the things that you liked and you didn't. I'm not going to be too kind with this, even though my rating was higher, quite a bit higher than yours. As you know, I can't rate anything lower than a 7, so that would have been right at the bottom of my scale. But I gave this 8.5 out of 10, what I like to call double A's.
Double A's?
Yeah, that stands for aggravating angels. I mean, Bathalmos shows up for 5 minutes after Will and Lyra have already gotten the job done, just to rub it in that he's been watching them anyway. And then, turns out I can't go to the land of the dead. See, I'm on another path. No explanation of what that path is or anything. I feel like a lot of the adaptation choices that they're making, some of which I'll have to wait until the book section to go into, have been really kind of detrimental to some of the ways that we could have been impacted or feel or have more investment in certain characters. And I'm specifically speaking about the Galavespians. There's also other things, this whole portrayal of the argument at the beginning seemed very CW. I understand that they're young and they're trying to sort through feelings and all that kind of stuff, but young people tend to not make up that quickly because it's about more about pride than anything else. And even though Pan helped Lyra to swallow her pride a little bit, it just felt unnecessary. They could have had a discussion. I understand what it does do is it makes Will's investment in going to the land of the dead somewhat make sense because he brings up this stuff about his dad, and Lyra even brings it up later that this way he can kind of make amends with his dad, that he didn't go and do the things that his dad wanted to right away. Instead, he went after her. The whole, and I know that a lot of people enjoyed it, but I could have done with a lot less of Asriel, and I guess I'll call her Marisa. I did not like the idea, and we brought this up in our book portion of the podcast last week, Holly, that it just so happens that Will leaves one window open. The guy who's been very careful to count his steps, that ever since he was told that to close windows by the gentleman who was training him with the knife, he's done nothing but close windows. And now he just happens, because the story needs it, he just happens to leave one open. And it doesn't matter how much of a adaptation of difference from the books that is or not. That doesn't really bother me one way or the other. It's just the idea of why put a situation out there and then pull it right back with something as simple as one line. It seemed like a waste of time. One thing that I can totally get down on with this episode is I will always be here for Mrs. Coulter spitting in Asriel's face. That's something that I will absolutely endorse every time. It's probably what brought my score up from about an 8 to an 8.5 this time around. Episode 4. You want me to go first? Since I'm on a ranting
Go ahead.
here. Yep. Okay. Well, I'm going to give it 9.3, what I like to call triple P's.
Triple P's?
Yeah, poor, pathetic Pans. I just crying and crying and crying as I was for poor Pan at the end of this episode. Now, Will had spent months searching for Lyra, and I feel like that this episode spent months getting us to the boat for the land of the dead, and still didn't manage to give us big chunks of the narrative that I was expecting from the books. I did not like the way the suburbs looked. I did not like the holding area. I know that some people thought that was cool. It was a cool adaptation, kind of Soviet-like. Not me. Give me the huts. Give me the other stuff that's in the books that I loved, and give me dinners, and give me them communing more with other dead people. That's the kind of stuff that I was looking for if they were going to spend a lot of time here before they got to the land of the dead. That's what I was looking for. Instead, I didn't get it. I got a drawing with a shape on it and a line through it. I got a bunch of old men telling young women what to do. And I did not like it at all. I just did not like that adaptation. But I am basing a lot of this rating, this much higher rating, 9.3, based on my cries. Because that's going to have a big impact on me, is how emotional I get for each episode. And there was nothing not to get emotional about at the end of this particular episode. It was really rough on me. Plus, just give Ruth Wilson every single entertainment award that ever existed for the rest of time, whether she's been in a project or not, because, oh my gosh, I howled with laughter during that whole sequence where She puts on her mother's purple dress or puts on the purple dress and leads that attendant around. And, the whole, and I know it was just a really bad joke, but it still worked for me. Everybody needs support. I just thought that was, we all need support. And I will need your support, Holly, to get through this podcast. So why don't you tell me what your rating was?
Okay, well, we have this weird tendency where I feel like I rate my episodes lower than you do, but the way I feel about it sounds better. Like I feel like I still am rating it higher than you are. I gave it a 9.
That's because you go from a 1 to 10, and I only go from a 7 to 10. So yeah, there's exponential differences there.
I guess so. So I gave it a 9 out of 10. Triple M's.
Triple M's.
Mary meets Mulefa.
Yay!
Yay! Okay, so this episode is super. The ending is so sad, and to this day, this part in the book, and now this moment in the show is one of the saddest things ever consumed by me in my life. Every time I read this passage in the book, I am inconsolable. I'm gonna cry right now, and I'm gonna cry later when we get more into it. So I'm so sorry in advance, but like. I lose it every time. It is so rough and heartbreaking. And I think for an adaptation, I think they did a really great job of adapting that. I got like those feel. I was crying when I saw the boatman. So if if you were watching this and never read the books, you weren't there yet, but like I was already there. I saw that man on the boat and I just lost it because I knew what he was gonna say. And oh my God. Anyway, but I needed to do the triple M's for my rating to try to like keep my spirits up because this was the moment. This was something I've been looking forward to and wondering since they announced since back in 2015 and they announced that they were making this adaptation. I was wondering how they were going to make these Mulefa look, and we've only just seen a little bit. We haven't seen all of it. So I know there's some book readers out there who might be mad because they haven't seen XYZ yet, but guess what? It's coming. I'm not worried about it. Let's let them unfold the story for us. I think it looks great. It's impossible for me to even imagine. Like, I don't think my brain knew how to imagine a Mulefa. So I know it's not exactly as it is described in the books, but I really like the look of it and I'm really excited to go forward with Mary's story, and I'm focusing on that so I don't cry for the next 2 hours while we record this podcast.
Put it on the poll. Would you rather not get XYZ for book readers, or would you rather get XYZ for book readers and it looks stupid? Because this is going to be a real challenge. We could talk more about it in the book section.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the ratings. As usual, they've been pretty disappointing. I got these from spoilertv.com is where I got these ratings from. Last week, the debut on December 5th of the first 2 episodes, the 9 o'clock slot got a measly 0.04 share of the 18 to 45 demo. Naturally, a lot of shows only got that share because everybody was watching football, which is even more of a testament to the fact that HBO has thrown this series away and said, yeah, we're just going to put something we don't care about in the time slot against the NFL, so that way we don't have to worry about the fact that we're losing to the NFL and to ESPN. Here's the more disturbing number. Only 154,000 views in the first live watching. That's pretty darn low when you consider that like House of the Dragon was, even on its old broadcast live TV, was still pulling 7 million viewers.
I mean, like, it sucks. It's just not a great time right now for this, unfortunately. I am struggling to like get in the right frame of mind to watch the show I love, just because of where we are in the year and how busy everybody is.
So if you hate that take that I just gave there, feel free to tweet at me at the Dust Podcast on Twitter. You can also use Matt's audio blog, MATTS audio blog, If you're using Hive Social or Mastodon, you can find me in either of those places. Use that same spelling for emails, mattsaudioblog@gmail.com. You can also leave comments on our posts at the website, mattsaudioblog.com. You can also find all of the podcast app links there, and you can find, I guess, all of the back episodes as well, except for the YouTubes. Our YouTubes are exclusive to Double P Media's YouTube, which you can find at youtube.com/c/the word double, the letter P, the word media. And or you can just use those cute little handles now, youtube.com @Double P Media. You can also find them on the socials at the word double, the letters PHQ. That's Hive, that's Twitter, that's Instagram as well. Or you can use that same spelling for their Facebook page, facebook.com/the word double, the letters PHQ. And you can find more information about the podcast network at doublepmedia.com, the word double, the letter P, the word media.com. We want to hear from you. Getting on to our music analysis.
Hey, Matt.
Coach?
Matt, yeah, hey, how you doing? Oh, I just wanted to stop in for a minute.
Coach, what are you doing here?
Well, if you'll let me finish, I just wanted to stop in. And you guys did a really cool game last week, but you suck being the host and a contestant. That just doesn't work all that well. So I thought I would, since you haven't done anything with the Bustin' Blockbusters podcast, like in the last 2 months since Lord of the Rings ended, since you've not put out a single episode and I haven't been around, you haven't asked me to be part of anything, I thought I would just come over here and say hello to Holly. Hi, Holly. And
hi, Coach.
And I thought I would say, why not utilize me since you're not using me on the other podcast?
Coach, the reason I'm not using you is because everybody complained saying how terrible you were and that they never wanted to hear from you again.
Well, I mean, haters are going to be haters, but, I'm a tough guy. I'm a Trolloc. I'm a Trolloc from the Wheel of Time, and so I'm very tough. And I'm not going to let little words like that hurt me. You shouldn't let them hurt you either, Matt. Why don't you let me host this game that you introduced last week? And I promise you, I will make it better. I've got better music for it. I've got better questions for it. What do you think?
Oh, my God. Will it get rid of you? And how did you get the link to this chat anyway?
Well, I'm currently over in the other room at your other computer, and I just kind of hacked in.
Oh my God, Coach, you've got to stop doing this. You got to just stop just showing up. Okay, one chance, Coach, one chance to play this game, and then that's it.
All right. Well, this is great. Let's do it. It's time for the game that is sweeping the nation, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Coach T, your host. Welcome to Would You Show Up For It, where we ask certain situations in His Dark Materials if you would show up to see. I've got 2 contestants with me. One is a old curmudgeon by the name of Matt, and one is a fresh, lovely face in Holly. Holly, welcome to the show. My prompt card here says that you hate the cold, but you love animals. Is that correct?
That's correct, among other things.
Well, let me tell you, Holly, I didn't mean to be so restrictive. I mean, sure, you can love more than one thing. But the most important question for me to ask here is, do you consider Trollocs animals that you would love as well?
A what?
Trollocs.
I don't know what that is.
A Trolloc is an evil creature from the Wheel of Time.
Oh,
Like me.
Yeah, I could love you, Coach.
Okay, well, see, that's a problem because Trollocs hate to be called animals, so don't ever do that again. First question to you, Holly. Mrs. Coulter, going to repent at the chapel. Would you show up for it?
Absolutely, I would show up for that.
Any reason why?
I want to see it. I want to see her. I want to see how she gets dealt with by the Magisterium.
Okay. Matt, my prompt card here says that you're an old curmudgeon and that everybody hates you, that your takes are terrible, and the only reason people listen to you is for your music. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's pretty much it, Coach. Yeah, sure.
How about that question for you? Mrs. Coulter, going to repent at the chapel. Would you show up for it?
Yeah, Yeah, I think I would, just because it made me bust a gut when I did see it. So
Right.
I absolutely loved it. It was hilarious. And maybe it was a little bit too on the nose and a little bit too fourth wall. There were several things in this episode that were too fourth wall.
You know what, Matt? That's enough. We don't really need to hear from you anymore. Thanks for answering the question. Next question to you, Holly. Will you show up for York bossing Will around the way that he did when he was making a knife?
Absolutely, I would show up for that.
I like York. I think that York's pretty much a beast of my own kind. He may be a little nicer than me, which is something that I really can't respect because I like eating people who are nice. But I don't know. So you got a kick out of York telling Will that he needed to clear his mind. Did you like what Will found at the bottom of his mind?
When he found Lyra at the bottom of his mind?
Yes.
Yeah, that was nice. That was acceptable. But I mean, it wasn't nice if you like nice to eat nice people things. It was awful.
Well, I'll try to avoid it. Just because you like the situation, I'll try and avoid it. Matt, how about you?
Coach, I am always here for a bear bossing a human around. As you know, I let a bear trollic such as yourself boss me around all the time on the other podcast.
You don't need to talk about that, Matt. It's okay. You don't need to bring that up at all. Our third question. Holly, would you show up for a fruit feast prepared on the world of Mulefa?
Absolutely, I would eat a Mulefa charcuterie board. 100%.
That's lovely.
The best way to learn about a new culture is to try the food. So, why not?
Can I share a secret with you, Holly?
Sure.
I think because, in the Wheel of Time, my types, we like to eat humans too, right? So
okay.
I think I would like to try a Mulefa root. What do you think of that?
I'm less interested in trying the Mulefa, but I don't knock anybody for their choices. I think it's getting late. I might need to go soon, Coach. I'm getting scared.
Okay. Well, never mind. Just hang around here for just another minute.
Okay.
Here.
All right. I'll stay close by ish.
Matt, same question to you.
Coach, just get out of here. You know I would show up for the fruit. You know that I would show up to see a Mulefa and to talk to a Mulefa and to be in a new world. It's all good with me.
Well, you don't need to get so defensive about it, man. I mean, geez, I'm just trying to help here. I don't know how to pick out better music. The music you picked last week sucked. I mean, it really sucked.
Coach, just get out of here. Please, just get out of here.
And that's all that we have time for, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back next time with Would You Show Up For It?
No, we won't. We won't be back with this. No, not ever again.
Is he gone? I'm just gonna scoot back in here a little bit. He was making me nervous. I was trying to get away.
All right, so I've got some music to talk about. In fact, I have so much music to talk about. There's a lot more that I need to include, but this time around, we've got some new themes. We've got some tricky versions of old themes. We've got all kinds of great stuff in this particular musical analysis of the music of these two episodes from Lorne Balfe. And there was so much that even after 13 minutes and 40 seconds of this stuff, I still hadn't really finished everything. So you will get a bonus music podcast later on this week as well from me. It'll cover a couple more themes that I couldn't get to. In the meantime, if you're not into the music at all, well, you're going to have a bad week because there's 40 minutes of this, and then there's a bonus podcast later on in the week. So sorry for that. But if you're not into the music, skip ahead about 13 minutes and 38 seconds. Oh, so much pain at the end of the fourth episode, right? To hear the main theme being used in that way, and for it to create such sadness. There's no rhythmic pulse underneath this version of the main theme. The instruments and the ranges of those instruments make everything very sad. It's a horrible goodbye between Pan and Lyra. And it's very appropriate to use the main theme as opposed to a theme for Lyra or a theme for Will or a theme for whoever, because this is a large concept. This is a major point in the overall story. And so it deserves a main theme treatment. And there's no need to actually break it down. But I do want to note that the way that the 4 chord is used in this, sometimes it's held out just a little longer than you expect it to be. That's what really helps add to the sadness. What do I mean by the 4 chord? Well, we've had themes that we've already discussed. This is Asriel's theme, and the theme for the Mulefa that we will discuss in this breakdown. They sometimes use major 4 chords, and major 4 chords in a minor piece tend to add a little bit of hope or wonder or even ease. But by emphasizing the minor 4 chord in this version of the main theme, by holding it out a little longer in some places, that helps compound the sadness. A minor 4 chord always makes a minor tonic or the central key feel even heavier, more sad, sometimes more scary even. In this case, I guess you could take any of those instances. It was really well done by Mr. Balfe. And if you want to find that cut on the recently released official soundtrack for these 2 episodes, episodes 3 and 4 of season 3, look for the cut, I Love You, which was kind of Lyra's last words to Pan. It was awful. I cried. Not too ashamed to admit that. There were some other really neat tricks done with other themes as well in this particular episode. One of the things that I loved, that I felt really added humor to Mrs. Coulter walking around in her purple dress and chiding that Magisterium member that was following her around, was the way that her chords and her theme were used to indicate almost kind of a playfulness. But the kicker, and this is something that composers do very often that we take for granted and don't even think about, is you have the theme going, you have the music going underneath, and then when Mrs. Coulter gets to the punchline of everyone needs support, he lays out and lets Ruth Wilson deliver that line to where it's even more extraordinarily funny. Loved that. And then he kind of resumes it after that. But just those kinds of things. It's sometimes more important where you leave music out than where you put it in. And I feel like I haven't been giving Mary Malone quite enough support this season. Although I feel like the show hadn't given her much to do until the 4th episode, where she finally arrives in this new world. And I broke down this theme in episode 33. Go back to Dust 33 and hear me break it down on the anthology soundtrack that Lauren always puts out before the season starts. It was called A New World, and this is a new world and new inhabitants that Mary Malone is meeting. So there's no reason to tell you why it works as it is, although I will note that there's a huge jump of interval, the distance between notes. And sometimes the melodic shape, or how those jumps are made, can create certain psychological effects. In this case, the distance between the very first 2 melody notes is a full octave. That is a huge jump for a melody. And what it does is it adds epicness to it. But keep this melody in mind for Mary's further adventures in this world. On the official soundtrack for this week, it's called Mulefa. In fact, if you watch the captions, you will know the name of that particular inhabitant was Atal. So one might say it could be a theme for her. However, I believe that because Lauren called it A New World in his anthology soundtrack, that it is referring to the entire world in which Mary has stumbled into. I think it's going to be a pretty important theme as we go forward. So just keep this in your head as we go along. We had a return of a couple of other themes that we already knew. One, I'm not really sure if it was there or not. I'd have to go back and re-listen once again. But I think there was some of the Magisterium theme in some scenes with Father President McPhail. Feels weird to even say that. And we definitely heard the motif from Father Gomez's theme as well. We heard his theme actually more fully presented in the first 2 episodes. But like I said, a lot of these I have already broken down a great bit back in episode 33 of this podcast. So if you want a full breakdown of why some of these themes work, please go back to that podcast and listen. But the one old theme that was brought into this particular episode that I really loved because of the way that it was used was Will and Lyra's adventure theme. And this is not what I think is actually their love theme that we heard at the end of episode 2. This is a theme that we've heard all the way back from season 2. And in the season 2 official soundtrack, you can actually hear this theme first played in the cut, The Land of the Spectres. If you want to hear the nice kind of happy version of it, then go listen to the cue, Land of the Spectres. In the season 2 anthology, you can also hear a very nice version of it entitled The Children of the Prophecy. And again, this theme was used throughout season 2 with Will and Lyra in their adventures in Chittagaze and their adventures in Will's world. But the way that it was used in these 2 particular episodes was really interesting to me. First time that we hear it is actually when Will and Lyra are arguing about whether they should go to the land of the dead. They've walked away from the Galavespian and they are discussing whether they should go to the land of the dead or not. And they're having, a pretty serious discussion. And a lot of what happens during that conversation is actually just a bed of the first 2 chords of the theme. Once again, Lauren likes to use dichotomy with his themes. He'll use just the harmony as one part. And this way it's appropriate because it's kind of a dark conversation that they're having, even though that harmony actually goes between a major 1 chord and a minor 4 chord. But as I said earlier, anytime you apply a minor 4 chord to something, it adds a little bit more heavy weight. So let me just play the bed for you here first. And that's what you hear a lot of as they're having the discussion. But every once in a while, they sneak in this Will and Lyra theme. And this is, again, a theme for Will and Lyra basically working together to have an adventure. And since having a new adventure in the land of the dead is a point of discussion here, it seems appropriate that that melody would be placed here. But it's slower and it's subtle. Now, there's one track on this week's new music, the official soundtrack for episodes 3 and 4 that Lauren Balfe put out, entitled Excuses. And it covers a couple of themes within it. So this one exhibits 2 themes. No, wait. 3 themes. No, wait. 4 themes, all within the same cut as the narrative moves back and forth. Actually, it starts right at the beginning of episode 4 when Lyra and Will and Pan have arrived at the land of the dead and they're starting to follow dead people to the hub. And then when we switch to Mrs. Coulter bringing the intention craft to the Magisterium, it carries on through there as well. As we join Lyra and Will, we are at the cusp of being in the land of the dead. What do we get? We get the harmony first from the land of the dead theme that sounds like this. Notice the way that second chord feels like it's sinking. Those are all chord tones that are used in a diminished chord. And I broke this down back in episode 33 once again, so I'm going to ask you for a full breakdown to go back there. But a diminished chord is a symmetrical chord. And if it's one thing that we humans feel really uncomfortable about, it's symmetry within our harmony. We love symmetry in our beats. We hate symmetry in our harmony. And because this melody and everything else is based out of a diminished chord like this, everything feels really uncomfortable. And it should. The Land of the Dead should be uncomfortable. But just to remind you what the melody is like, this is the way that it sounded with beds underneath. Normally in the anthology soundtrack, we heard it with arpeggios underneath. And we even heard a little bit of it when Lyra woke up from one of her dreams with Roger one time in the first 2 episodes. But this melody is just as equally scary as the chords that it's based on. Ooh, gives me the creeps. Then we shift to the Magisterium and Mrs. Coulter arriving with the intention craft. And there are some things that are happening here that I absolutely love. First of all, there's a motive that I used to call the danger motive, which has always been associated with Mrs. Coulter in some ways. It's been associated with her because she's been a danger to Lyra. So it makes sense that it gets incorporated here because what Mrs. Coulter is about to do is dangerous. And Lyra is in danger still from the Magisterium. So that's why that danger motive gets placed on top of the harmony for Mrs. Coulter's theme. But here is a very neat trick that Mr. Balfe does. He incorporates one of Lyra's themes, not her main theme, so to speak, the Child of the Prophecy theme, but instead the other one where she's been more playful. Originally, it was called Scholastic Sanctuary from the very first His Dark Materials anthology. And that theme was used for the more playful side of Lyra, actually. For instance, when she was running across rooftops at Oxford or across boat decks with Egyptians as they were heading north. And I love that it's used here over the danger motive, and then with the Mrs. Coulter chords kicking in, 3 different themes combining to tell us narratively, and I'm assuming that you had already figured out what she was coming there to do. But essentially, she's trying to save Lyra from danger. She wants Lyra to be playful. That's Lyra's theme in there. She wants to stop the danger. That's why the motive danger is there. And it's her carrying out this mission. And that's why her chords are there as well. And that's what I'm going to leave you with. Holly and I will be back to spin the tiny wheel of topics for these episodes next. We've got a lot of topics to talk about here, Holly. Let's spin the wheel. Hate it when my glasses fail me and the lettering is so small. What does it say, Holly?
Did your glasses McPhail you or did they McFEAR you? Is what it says.
Well, yeah, I should have been able to see that. So they evidently McPhailed me. McPhail or McFEAR. Here's a guy who still can't get over Mrs. Coulter in any way, shape, or form. He's trembling when he's praying to the authority. And yet he's one of the scariest dudes right now to me because he seems scared. It's like when you back something into the corner and they have no choice but to come out and fight. And I think throughout the course of these 2 episodes, and maybe I'm placing some of the emphasis on the other episode, on the 4th episode over the 3rd, but just his ideas of how to destroy Eve, of how to do all of this, the measures that he's going to, the way that he seems to have Father Gomez completely in his pocket, somebody who I wouldn't want to have in my pocket anyway. The fact that his demon has to calm him down when he's praying. It all just seems so unstable and scary to me. I don't know. How did you feel about the McPhail scenes for at least episode 3?
Yeah, it is terrifying and it's people in the church in our world, like McPhail, are the reason, or just one of the reasons I don't care for the church in our world. Scary place, scary people. So doing a great job of that. So if you're not a church fan, it's really fun and easy to hate on McPhail for sure. And yeah, even it's the beginning of this episode with the intro, it's kind of cutting back and forth between Lyra and her dream about Roger and McPhail, and the dialogue he says in this opening is like, this child cannot survive. I mean, wow. I mean, this church is just full. Magisterium is ready to full on murder Lyra. That's hardcore. That's harsh. I mean, yeah. And that's a scary man.
Yeah. Well, this is a church that obviously offers no sense of forgiveness. You're either in or you're out. And the problem that I have is that when you've got somebody who seemingly is unstable, as McPhail is at the top, deciding who is in and who is out, there's no way that any kind of system, be it a government or a church system or whatever, can be fair. And we've never seen the Magisterium or the Oblation Board or any of that stuff actually be fair. But nonetheless, it just, the instability really added an extra dimension of fear. I will say that I really enjoyed seeing a very disheveled Father Gomez stumble back into the Magisterium.
Yeah. Good for that guy. But you're right. You're right. It is terrifying to have somebody like that, like you said, kind of backed into a corner, and his fear of messing up. He's just so volatile, and he looks like he'll do anything to protect himself and protect his interests. And anything they were trying to be subtle about in the first season or the second season, or really mostly the first season, as far as what they were doing with children and how they were trying to be discreet, like all of that is just completely out the window now. Like they're just full on a child hunt. And as we're going to see in episode 4, what they plan to do is even more horrific than just outright killing her. So, yeah,
absolutely.
I just gotta say, Will Keane is killing it. Like I am enjoying his performance a lot. It's crazy, and it is just mind-boggling to still remember, like, this is Daphne Keene's real dad playing this role, and how much fun to be like a villain opposite your hero daughter in a show. Like, that's really cool.
How weird must it be for Ruth Wilson to be looking at Daphne's dad and him always refer to Daphne as your child to her?
Yeah, right.
Or to have to refer to or to have to tell him my child to him.
Yeah.
That's got to be a little, you got to get past you got to get really into the character to get past those kinds of things. If
or the lusting after the real mother of his show child, or the show mother of his real child. I mean, so yeah, I'm getting
it's weird.
I'm getting it.
And what is going on with that thing? I mean, we can get more into this, I guess. Well, I don't know exactly when it was said. If it said in episode 3, or was it said in episode 4 where she said we're intertwined?
Because she's there, she's with like.
Oh, that's right. It's when she shows up at. Okay, so we'll talk more about that in episode 4. But he did bring in Dr. Cooper in this episode, right? So, and the way that he was with Dr. Cooper showed that person backed into a wall because he was very harsh with her. Well, I think I can read this. Gee, thanks for all the help, Bathalmos. And I think I pretty much covered what I had to say about it in the first part. It's like, what was the point of Bathalmos? Well, okay, maybe he's on another path. Maybe he's got more stuff to do later on in the series. There's only, this series is half over now. This season is half over, so I can't imagine how much more he has to do. And most of the time he spends it off screen, but he tells you he was there all the time, and he tells you that there's nothing he can do. There are things about book Bathalmos that I think we can say, because it's been clearly defined as a different adaptation. Bathalmos is such a miserable character in Amber Spyglass. Just a miserable character. even before the whole thing with Baruch happens. He's just, what, petulant? Is that a good way to describe him?
Cynical? Cynical, I would say, maybe.
Yeah, and there's none of that here. I mean, this is one of those adaptation choices where I'm just kind of like, maybe it would have been better just not to have him at all. And I know fans would have screamed bloody murder not to have him and Baruch in it, but what purpose to the story has he served to this point? I have no investment in this character. I have very little investment in the angels. I think the angel I'm most invested in is Zephania, who's sitting over there on the council, but never shows up for any of the meetings, evidently, because she wasn't there for the Mrs. Coulter council.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know what it is about this series, but the way they're doing this adaptation is a lot of these small changes really aren't bothering me. And I think it's just the nature of the pacing of the last two books. I personally feel like they're paced pretty quickly, and they are young adult novels, so they don't dwell in details and Philip Pullman doesn't really dwell in the details or spend he could spend more time world building, and especially for me, like after, being immersed in Martin's universe, it's kind of weird to go back and read all of this, and there's a lot there, but what we know about it isn't very much. And I kind of feel that way about these characters. It's so fast paced in the book. Like everything moves so quickly in the book that I feel like I didn't really get a chance to connect with the characters anyway, even in the books. So I just kind of feel the same way here as I did reading. I'm always going to be more attached to Will and Lyra and Pan, the kind of like our heroes in the story. And then also curious about what Mrs. Coulter and Asriel are doing. And then as far as all of these other tertiary characters, there's another Galavespian that I guess has been completely left out now. I wasn't sure if we had talked about that previously, or maybe I was just waiting to see if we were going to see that character come, but I guess we're not getting it. Again, I'm really not that upset about it, to be honest. And I know there's a lot of people out there who are upset about a lot of these little changes. It's not hitting me like that way, though. It's not hitting me hard. It's not bothering me.
Anything else on this, or spin the wheel?
Well, let's spin the wheel.
What does it say, Holly?
Focus on what matters, or when there's a will, there's a way.
Gee, I wonder who could have possibly wrote that dad joke. That would be me. Okay, so lots of little subcategories we could talk about here as far as Will is concerned. Do you have anything to say about the Land of the Dead argument? Because to me, that was just a mini little CW show that was happening there, so that we could say, oh, they're teenage kids. Oh, they're angsty. Oh, they don't know how to deal with their feelings. Oh, wait, suddenly they do. That's the kind of thing that happens in a CW show like Riverside. I don't need that.
I guess I don't watch a lot of CW shows. I guess a difference from the book to the show that I actually don't mind is that in the books, Will is 100% game to go with Lyra to the world of the dead for the reasons they get to, like in the episode that maybe he wants to talk to his dad. I like that in the show, Will is a little bit more doubtful. It kind of plays into that theme of what we get into, later at the end of the episode when they are trying to mend the knife, and Lyra's conversation about doubt and what that means. It's not a bear. It's not human to doubt it. It's neither of those things to doubt. But good people doubt. So I kind of like that they included that. And we'll get to it in episode 4, but when we talk about episode 4, but Lyra's just decision to go and nothing stopping. We needed somebody to question Lyra a little bit more. I know everybody's been questioning her, but we needed somebody completely on her side to kind of doubt and question Lyra's intentions for going to the Land of the Dead.
Well, let's face it, going to the Land of the Dead is crazy. It's wacko.
It's crazy, right? I liked seeing Will fight her on it a little bit. I don't mind that it was a whatever teenager fight. I don't care. I think we needed that.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't have minded the debate, but as long as they're going to treat them like they're such mature kids as they're cutting into from Chitagaze into Carlos's place.
You're touching on the topic that maybe that's where I start to maybe have, I don't want to say complaints or gripes, but that's where I'm like not sure that they know exactly which direction they want to go in. But again, I think a lot of this we're gonna have to cover more and once we get to our episode 4 stuff anyway. So
how about the reforging of the knife? I loved Yorick's instructions. I understand why they did the cutaway where you just see the knife being molded a little more, being hammered, being placed in water, to cool. And
we can't afford
stuff.
Bare hands. We can't be having.
We can't afford for it to look as stupid as it might have looked. I think
it would have looked pretty bad, probably.
So we couldn't afford to have we have a great character in Yorick. Let's not wreck it. Is what I feel like the whole idea of that was. I did like how all of the things that were on the surface that were clouding Will's mind had to do with his parents, and the thing that was at the bottom of it was Lyra, that allowed him to find the clarity.
I actually, so what was, it would have been more distracting to just have like just the shot of the knife if the knife didn't look so interesting. I really like how they made where the knife shattered, kind of raised as it was mended back together, and it added that new detail to the knife. So I was actually more focused on that when we were doing the weird like hammering and the cooling part aspect. So I wasn't thinking about like lack of bear paws as much as I was like focused on how different and neat the knife looks now. So I guess that was kind of a success because it distracted me from it. I didn't think about there was no bear paws holding it until somebody else mentioned it later on the internet. I was like, oh yeah, I guess we didn't. But so we didn't talk about the warning, like Yorick's warnings. We didn't really talk about that too much, about Yorick being like really just uneasy about the knife in general and their purpose. And
yeah.
Did you have any thoughts about that?
Well, one of the things that I liked was Yorick standing his ground, because even when he saw that knife for the first time, what was at the end of episode 1 of this season, to Yorick, that knife is just a distortion of things that should be or should not. Yeah, it's strange. How did you do that? Do that again.
That knife is strange.
Okay, well, that's not as good a Yorick as I thought it sounded as I was talking, but it's still a pretty good Yorick. He almost sounds kind of like Coach T, which is kind of terrible. At any rate,
it's strange. I'm just gonna keep practicing it while you're recording. Sorry. That knife is strange.
Just throw that in anytime. I just as soon as I leave a pause somewhere in there, just throw that in there. It'll be perfect.
Strange. Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, stop. So no, I really like that he kind of held his guns. And I loved, and this doesn't have anything to do with Will, but I loved the fact that he called Lyra out when she told him that the alethiometer was talking about balance and all this stuff, and then it said yes. And
she played him. She played him so hard. It was great. I loved it.
But he called her out on it. He still called her a silver tongue.
Because that's how she played him, is she made it. You know what? That was weird, because that was another complaint I saw people in the book, like people who read the books were like, oh, the alethiometer is like absolutely sure in the book when she asks to like, is that what they're supposed to do? It's like a hard yes. So I think it's kind of funny that like, if we're staying true to the book, that like she kind of made, I don't know if she was trying to maybe put Yorick at ease and be like, maybe the alethiometer say it's not such a good idea, but it's still telling me
she was playing a joke on him. She was being mean. Lyra is always being mean.
Lyra is strange.
I really loved that moment though when he says Lyra, like he's like a dad, like fussing at his child. I was like, oh my god, Lyra has all of the best dads that are not her actual dad, and Yorick Bronison is one of them. And Yorick's the only one that really seems to have like a healthy fear of the knife versus anybody else who's just trying to grab it and wield it.
It says Ogunwe, Ruta, and Roke. So Ogunwe and the double R's. not a whole lot to say about this. I think there was probably more to say about Ogunwe, and we probably missed our opportunity in episode 1. You said a lot of nice things about Ogunwe. Here, him and Ruta obviously are not very much for Mrs. Coulter, and he's just more skeptical. Ruta has a reason to hate her. Ruta was the one who had to come and release that witch from being tortured by giving her the release of death, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That Mrs. Coulter was torturing in the boat or wherever she was torturing them. So I understand Ruta's motivation. There was a little talk in there between Ogunwe and Ruta. You think they're trying to put something there between the two of them?
Yeah, I think they started setting that up from the first episode of the season, or like the first time we see them meet. I think they definitely were. They've been like showing them kind of appreciating each other's whatever they got. Ruta's the one that knew who Ogunwe was, right? That's who Asriel said found him was Ruta. So I think it's kind of cute that she was just like a witch watching him from afar, and he's like, what's up? I don't know. It's I didn't feel much of anything building between them in these 2 episodes, but I did get that feeling from episodes 1 and 2 that they were maybe trying to set them up.
I mean, the only thing that this council really does is just prove what an Asriel that Asriel is, because they all have these reservations, and they speak these reservations. And he says, "Sure, speak your mind." And then he jumps in and talks about things while they're trying to investigate Mrs. Coulter. And it's almost like they can't say no to the dude. So is he any more of a liberator, or is he just as much of a dominator, just with a few different rules?
A lot of people out there might disagree with me. A lot of people out there might not like this version of Asriel. I think it really makes sense for his character and what he's been doing this whole time, that he would, of course, just not really care about her and not believe that she's Eve. It does sound ridiculous. If I was him, I would probably think it sounds absurd too and not believe it. Daughter is the, origin of sin. But I'm on Mrs. Coulter's side because at least she's smart enough to realize that the Magisterium doesn't care whether that idea is stupid or not. They are going to try to kill her, and she's going to do everything she can to protect her daughter.
I did like the way that Mrs. Coulter answered them. Honestly, even though it wasn't the answers that they wanted to necessarily hear, and probably not the answers that she necessarily wanted to really give them, but she was in such a desperate place to help her daughter that she was willing to actually expose herself in a lot of ways. Now, does she actually feel terrible about separating children from their demons and this stuff? Maybe not. But nonetheless, or not, at least it's not as terrible as she acted like, or she stated that she had felt. Nonetheless, the desperate nature of trying to actually, I guess, confirm their points of view to her, but show that it was for a reason, I thought was quite admirable of Mrs. Coulter. Whereas everybody just seemed like, I've got all these reasons to hate you and to put you in jail forever and whatever. But okay, well, we're going to let you just hang out. That's fine. It serves the Mrs. Coulter character, but I didn't get any service of any of those other characters out of it, because every point that they brought up suddenly became completely moot until Mrs. Coulter stole the intention craft at the end of the episode. And even then, when Asriel gave her a nod, and I suppose Lord Roke a nod as he was jumping in there as well. But, and then he tells Ogunwe, well, she's just, she's going to protect her mother. She can probably do more good with this thing that we just, this priceless piece of machinery that we just gave her.
She was much better at operating than Asriel was, by the way. Like, yeah. Wow, that thing was like so smooth and quiet. Like, so Asriel is driving, like, when Asriel's driving the intention craft, it's like one of those cars without, they remove the mufflers or whatever, and they go like ridiculously loud down the road and obnoxious. Whereas like Mrs. Coulter riding the intention craft, she's in a Prius. Like, it was so smooth, so perfect. I'm just gonna keep gushing about Marisa Coulter in this episode, and this is more true in episode 4, but I love that we're actually finally starting to see how actually intelligent she is, and not just like how good at manipulating people she is. Those are two different types of intelligence, and like the way, but she is actually very, very smart. She has to be one of the few educated women from her world, and to have risen as high as she has. It is so nice to see that to see some brains though, and see, like, we know she's responsible for building all of these things, but seeing her like look at things and figure things out extremely quickly. I love that. I'm so happy. I'm so happy we're getting this. Wait, I got one more thing about Asriel and Marisa in this episode about the end. But I
again, on the poll, is it Marisa or Marissa, or does it depend on how you feel? We'll put that on the poll at the Dust Podcast on Twitter. Go ahead.
Just during that moment, I said, okay, I am Dame off on Asriel this episode. No, I'm not making excuses for him. It was terrible. And she, good for him, spitting in their face, and the way she told him to stay back, get back, don't touch her.
Yeah. Get your hands
I'm for it. That was great. That was great stuff.
The line that absolutely killed Asriel for me, and probably will for the rest of this series, no matter what he does or how good he does it, is when he told her, "Why can't you be who I want you to be?"
Yep.
That was the most unhealthy line I've ever heard. A guy who claims that, who clearly thinks that he still is in love with this woman. It's not healthy. Whatever he's got going on as far as his thoughts about her, that was offensive.
It was.
To me.
I'm glad it's included though, because I kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, I'm kind of flipped the script. I'm definitely more Team Marisa than I am Team Asriel. I think the show's done a really good job of really showing us why Asriel is a terrible father, besides just neglecting, Lyra and leaving her to grow up in a college and all of the
just
things.
A terrible man.
All of the negligent things he done are, is one thing, but just this showed us who he really was, and like really how he's gonna do. Nothing is gonna change his motivation. He is gonna put what he wants first, always, nonstop, and now I'm thinking about what Lyra is going to do in the next episode. So kind of like father, like daughter. But I think that's a good thing for us to see, that Asriel is, even though he's on the side of the good, he is not a good man.
Yeah. Well, this wheel has run out of topics, so it's time to move on to Holly's second favorite game behind 3 words, and that's what's worse.
What's worse?
Okay, so I have a question written down, Holly. Do you have a question written down? Or
No.
do you want to just do one question per round here?
Let's just do one question per round.
All right. Do you want to ask the question, or do you want to, because whoever asks the question this round will have to be asked the question the next round. So I'll give you the choice. Do you want to ask this question, or do you want to be asked this question?
You can ask me the question.
Lyra, it's strange.
Okay. What's worse? Being encouraged to go to the land of the dead, even though it sounds crazy and dangerous, or taking orders for a bear? This is a Will-centric question, obviously.
I'm going to say it's worse to be encouraged to go to the land of the dead, because it's crazy and dangerous.
What?
Yeah. And I'd rather take orders from a bear, honestly. I'm a good follower, though. I'm a good team player. I like taking orders. It sounded weird.
Holly is strange.
Okay. Well, I guess I have. Is that all you got? That's all there is?
I mean, Land of the Dead are being ordered around by a bear. I mean, I guess it depends on what the bear is ordering me to do, but if it's fixing it, I'll be ordered around by York Burnison any day.
All right. There's several reasons why you're completely wrong. One is the Land of the Dead is real, and so therefore it should not be feared near as much as a bear who is also real, because the land of the dead, if you have a knife, you can go in and out of. You can actually get in and out of that place. And that means that you can get into or out of dangerous situations. When you're taking orders from a bear, what if the bear isn't friendly? What if the bear gives you orders to stand there while he slices you in half? Are you going to take that order? No, you're not going to take that order, because that's much more dangerous than just being in the land of the dead where you can cut in or you can cut out. That's my argument. That's what I'm saying. We'll put it on a poll. You can vote for Holly because she's clearly right here. Anybody should take orders from a bear as opposed to being in the land of the dead. Nonetheless, we'll put it on a poll, and I do expect you, at least one of you, to vote for my side of the story, because come on, you can't always depend on the bear being a York. What if I didn't say the bear York? I said a bear in my question. It was a trick. I tricked Holly. Wheel of topics this time around. I can read this one. Take me to the best places. Speaking of which, it seems like it goes right hand in hand with our last what's worse question. What you got on this, Holly?
I just loved this line. Honestly, it was this episode did not, especially with the Will and Lyra scenes, not a lot of fun there, but that was just really cute. I thought that was a really sweet moment that they'll have you. I'm going to go to the land of the dead. You take me to the best places, or
what? That was a smart aleck remark.
We needed that though. We needed that moment. There's many more of those moments. So
Lyra, I'd have slapped him.
Yeah. I feel like Lyra deserves all the slapping in this episode, but
she does an awful lot of dangling truths out there without actually speaking them. She's like, with Pan especially, which I guess we can talk about, but it just feels like that they've really taken some of the, I guess you would say, some of the resentment that is present in the next book series. I feel like they really planted a lot of seeds here, but we can talk more about that in the book section.
For sure. Lots of seeds, but I'm good with it, actually. I think it works for the story overall.
I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying that it's there is all I was pointing out. Will tries to make the best of a situation by trying to make a joke. So that was good. I love that. Spin the wheel again.
Spin the wheel.
Where did it land, Holly?
All right. In negotiations with Mrs. Coulter.
Dun, dun, dun. She's in negotiations with a lot of people in this episode, with McPhail, with Roke, with Dr. Cooper. She's kind of like almost negotiating with her mother, wherever her mother is, where they got this trunk. It's by taking on some of the things that was in the trunk. And then of course, there's all kinds of wonderful things about Mrs. Coulter in this episode. We've been gushing about her already this particular podcast episode, just from episode 3 and bleeding into this one. But what else have you got on Mrs. Coulter this episode, Holly?
I really do like this part in the book with Roke and how, she does, get away from Asriel, and Roke is sent to like spy on her. And I do love how they end up kind of teaming up to, figure out what's going down at the Magisterium. And I love that so much. I think that's great stuff. And so I think Roke is probably my favorite use of the Galavespians. I know we're going to talk about how we're not there. Salamakia is not there with Lyra and Will in the land of the dead. Like, she should be in the books. Whatever. I'm indifferent to that. I do love this stuff with Roke and Mrs. Coulter, though, and I'm really glad that we have it. Good stuff.
This is the one thing that has given me any hint of having investment in the Galavespians at all. Otherwise, to me, they're just little claymation-looking computer graphic with Skylab solar panels on their backs. And I like Roke. I'm not exactly... See, the thing that always hurts me is when they just throw in lines like, well, I can't communicate with Asriel because my lodestone resonator doesn't work anymore. It broke while I was getting into the attention craft. Show me that. Don't tell me that. Show me that when he gets into the thing. I don't recall seeing anything at the end of episode 3 that showed me that.
I feel like the book does the same thing, though. I feel like the book is a lot of tell and don't show. And so I don't know. Again, I get it. Like, but that isn't for me, it's not one of those things that really like
you can put things in your imagination in that, but when you're in a television show, I need it to be shown to me. Because see, now I don't know if he's lying to her or not.
I think what I wish we would get a little bit more of the Galavespians is just their a little bit of their story. So we know Ogunwe, like they're taking children in Ogunwe's world, but like we don't really know anything about the Galavespian world, and like except that they're small. But like, what does the Magisterium look like to them, or what does the authority look like to them, and what does their process, like what is their, you know, I guess aging maturity process for adolescents, that like what's the thing for them? Is it when they get their wings? Like that's what I would like to know more information. Like give me more.
Do they all only wear black?
Do they all only wear black? Do they only get their wings when when I guess somebody from Lyra's world, when their demon would settle? Is that all connected? And is whatever the authority or magisterium doing in their world stopping them from flying, or like what are they trying to inhibit in their world? Like I said, I would just want more of that. I that's what I would need, because otherwise they're just random characters kind of pulled together to kind of tell the story.
McPhail. Now, they are intertwined, according to Mrs. Coulter. I love how she uses her sexuality to the most abstinent man she's ever met to intimidate him. I don't like that they've made him so sexually attracted to her. I don't like that when she uses a phrase like that, it might put a question in somebody who's not paying attention's mind as to, wait, did they have sex? No. She just called him the most abstinent man she'd ever met. So that can't be the case. So what are they intertwined about? Oh, yeah, murdering a cardinal. That's what they're intertwined about. When you see that after she levels the accusation, he's fazed by it at first, but by the time he's sending her away, he's going to take care of the problem. He's going to, I think what they're planning here is they're going to separate her from her demon, right? They're going to do the same. They're going to do the whole blade thing that they did at Bolvanger to her. And that's what's going to give the energy for this bomb, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
she gave him blue balls to rage.
That's a double B.
It is a double B.
I loved the introduction of, or at least the thought process of this whole idea of the trunk and everything, and how that evidently was sent over by mom, or they found it from mom, or whatever. Madame Delamere, I believe, or Delamar, is the woman in question that was Mrs. Coulter's mother. But the reason why I love this, Holly, is because the rage with which she slams that lid back down. And then you go back and you think to season 2 and that conversation between her and Lee Scoresby when they had Lee Scoresby in jail. And you put all of that together, and oh my gosh, what has Marisa, or Marissa, whichever you want to call her, what has she been going through her entire life? It's heartbreaking to see that, you know, that anger come out of her in that moment. And it's just because it's her mother. And I can directly link that in my mind. And maybe I'm being incorrect here, but I can directly link that to that conversation between her and Lee, where we found out just how vulnerable Mrs. Coulter is in terms of how she had been abused. That to me was one of the most defining moments of these 2 episodes. I loved it.
I apologize. Can you remind me about that conversation with Lee? What does she say about her mother? Because
he's talking about abuse.
His abuse, and she's affected by it.
and she's affected by it.
Okay, cool. Okay, I forgot. I didn't remember that. And this does get into some interesting territory with the, like you alluded to earlier, Matt, with the sequel trilogy. This is potentially some more kind of maybe groundwork being laid there. But it doesn't really give us like too much information. But it was really interesting to hear, just to even hear about Marissa's mother in this episode. And that's all I'll say until we get to book stuff.
Well, yeah, one of the things that I think that what I love about the fact that they're taking information from those other books and putting it in here is it fleshes out the character completely as that character would exist in this story. Even if you don't get it from Phillips' books because he didn't reveal it later. If you don't get it from Pullman's books because he didn't reveal it later, you can always go back and then think about that stuff as you're rereading, right? Mm-hmm. But here, because we have access to the other material, it can all be folded into the universe at the same time, which I think is one of the best things about the adaptation of this story, personally.
I agree 100%. And I will talk more about that.
Well, I will just tell Mrs. Coulter that we all need support. And I already mentioned this, but I busted a gut during that entire sequence. From the moment that she looks at Mr. Roke, or at Lord Roke, and he goes the other way, and she goes the other way, and that attendant is following her around. You can't go there. You can't go there. And she just keeps going and says, but I need to repent. I must repent. Where's the chapel? No, wait, the authority doesn't talk as well to me in my room as he does in his room. So I need to find the authority. And she just keeps going door to door, door to door. And the best part about it was every time there was a gag, like when she opened up the doors to the chapel and everybody else was in there worshiping and she said, not interesting, Lauren stopped the music. He let her take the center stage with the gag. And then the music starts up again. She turns around and then there's the attendant again. And then the music stops again and she gets to deliver the line. Perfect. It's just as important where you take music out as it is where you put it in. So I thought that made it that much more funny.
And we don't know really anything about Mrs. Coulter's mother, but I like to think that when she put that dress on and she did her hair in that way, that she was in a weird way channeling her mother. And I felt like she was like just being her mother in that moment, especially with that line about like, well, I think God hears me best in his house. That just sounds like something her mother would probably have said. I like that a lot. It was good stuff.
Me too. Spin the wheel.
Landed on a topic that we were kind of just on, the Magisterium Mayhem. And
that's a double M.
Double M. Magisterium Mayhem. And a DNA bomb.
Yes. I love Dr. Cooper. Not because I don't love Dr. Cooper as a person. I don't love Dr. Cooper as a character. Man, I can't help but feel a little bit of empathy for her. Where that fox seemed so scary in season 1, it's just pathetic looking now. She's drank herself practically to death. Poor Miss Dr. Cooper has. And who wouldn't after all that stuff that she went through up at Volvanger, and the way that she's being treated by Father McPhail, and then just the way that her and Mrs. Coulter interact, to me, was just golden. This is privileged stuff. Well, you've always taken such good care of me, Dr. Cooper. Well, and you took good care. I just loved all of that. I feel terrible for her. She's in a horrible position, and I would be drinking too, for sure, if I was in her position. But nonetheless, I just feel bad for her. Can't help it. On the other hand, this is very nefarious stuff that she's put together. She's going to split a soul from a body to give it the energy to create a bomb that can read a lock of hair that can then send it relentlessly. It will be relentless. Those were the words that she used to Father President McPhail, pardon me. And that's just horrific. It's a DNA bomb. And what do you do to fight that? Mrs. Coulter thought she had Roke go get the hair. Evidently, that's not all the hair. They were smart enough to separate enough out to where they could use it to read. I guess they knew what she was going to do because they were spying on her somehow. I don't know what's going on there.
I loved that she walked into that room and figured out within 15 seconds that we were making a bomb and how they were making the bomb and what they were going to do. And then it's only too late that she realizes that, you know, after they take the lock of hair, that like it's for Lyra. That's bad. So yeah, she trying to save Lyra. She ended up putting her in a worse position and potentially herself in a worse position. But man, I gotta respect her for doing everything she can to at least try to save her child, unlike Asriel, who's just gonna let her wander alone in the land of the dead, not worry about her. And yeah, Dr. Cooper, I don't think I feel quite as bad for her as you do. I was starting now, and forgive me, I feel terrible because now I don't remember. Was she severed in the first season? Because like if she wasn't, it feels like she has since been severed, but that also could just be maybe the depression and everything she's been through since, you know, nearly dying in season 1.
She didn't seem quite as blank as like the nun did.
That's what she felt more blank than to me this time than she did previously, which is why I thought about it. But again, I could be wrong. It could just be all of everything else that she's been through.
Ready to spin the wheel?
Let's do it.
It landed on the Quadruple M.
Quadruple M.
Mary Malone's Marvelous Mulefa.
Not a lot really to say here because we don't really know much except for this weird creature that I'm telling you guys is called the Mulefa because they didn't tell us in the show yet.
The subtitles did give that Mulefa a name, Atal. Yeah, so it did say that Atal speaks, and that's when we got Unga. Which
do you think that was eat? Because then she like ate right after, but I don't know.
It could mean eat. It could mean, or it could mean for you.
Unga. What a nice, how nice. I would love to go camping outside and have breakfast brought to me by a seemingly magical creature. Seems cool. That talks. I don't know what language it speaks, but it's talking.
Yeah, it was communicating.
Those berries were really small, and that trunk wasn't like exactly tiny. And I appreciated how the berries were just like all sitting straight up on the plate rock. Like it was really beautiful presentation for this breakfast meal. I really appreciated the effort put into the presentation.
I appreciated the fine china because
Michelin,
where are you gonna get a human-sized cup in this world?
I don't know. That cup looks like it was made out of like a coconut or something like it.
Wonder what that could be.
I wonder too. More on that in book talk, maybe.
So
let's do it. Let's just get to the sad. I think let's do it. I think we only have one topic on the wheel left. Really, it's sad.
Well, I have one other topic here,
okay,
and I'll just roll it into this one real quick. We don't give Mary Malone enough credit. The stuff she hasn't been given a whole lot, but at least now we know that her story is somewhere, that she's in this whole new place, and we're going to get to explore it with her. So I'm very happy about that. The other thing that I was excited about is Lyra meeting her death.
So yeah, the concept of people having their own death, and it's born with, and it goes your whole life with you. I have always found this terrifying, kind of freaky idea really comforting. It's actually a very comforting notion. And I like that, and it's one of those things that sometimes I forget about it, and then when I like reread the series, and I get to this part, and I always want to tell myself, I was like, oh, I should just pretend like my death is with me all the time, and then I can be like my imaginary friend, my death. So I might bring that back.
Lyra is strange.
Yes, death is strange. So, but yeah, super super interesting. And
I liked how they left some of it kind of cryptic. And because that way that made the end that much more impactful, because
right,
they had that conversation, because Lyra turns around to her and says, will he understand? And they had no conversation about it, but it's now that Lyra knew what was going to happen anyway, or she thought that Will wouldn't be able to go because he wasn't accepting of his death. Which is, here's another thing. All these people are waiting around in this hub, and they're just waiting for the deaths to come by and take them to the boat. Nobody is resisting, even though the boatman does say at the end, he says, yeah, I've had people resist before, because I guess that's the moment of truth.
Yeah.
But nobody is resisting. Yet we have Roger, while everybody else is walking like zombies through these whole 2 episodes, just zombies in a line, going to wherever it is that they have to go. Roger's struggling against it. And there are people who are carrying him, fighting against him. We see him actually try to struggle against people in this dream that Lyra has back in episode 3. Why is Roger the only one fighting this that we see? Why aren't there more people fighting this?
Is he actually fighting it, or is Lyra just dreaming that he is?
Okay, I retract my question.
I don't, it's kind of ambiguous in the books whether, like, it's kind of easy to assume that what Lyra's seeing in her dream is real, because we eventually do go to the land of the dead. So I don't really know how to interpret that, actually. I am not sure if what she was dreaming was real and what she was seeing was real, or if it was just, I don't know, some weird way that he was able to actually reach out to her and communicate with her through the dream, and everything else is just something that she was just seeing, but not real. I don't know. There's a lot of questions. Again, it's not a question I desperately need the answer to, so I probably won't dwell on it. So one thing, when I was reading the book, and I don't remember if it's explicit in the book and not in the show, or if I'm just interpreting it that way, but like the whole concept of like seeing your death, my interpretation was from the book is like that was its own world. Like there was a world where people saw their death with like Lyra's world has demons or whatever else we have. I was under the impression that there is a world where people are born and they have their deaths with them that they can see and speak to their entire life. I could be misinterpreting that or misremembering.
Oh, I thought that was where they were when they were waiting to go on the boat, but maybe I'm wrong. No. I also thought that all deaths were male for some reason in reading the book.
I thought it was, I'm going to have to go back and reread. And I haven't done that in a while. So,
or at least that Lyra's death was.
I thought it was, yeah, because I thought it was kind of like the demon. It was the opposite. It was the opposite gender of your gender. But I, again, could be wrong. So sorry, podcast listeners, if it's frustrating that I don't remember these details. But yeah, I like that idea. And do you think it's weird that even though Will has accepted what Lyra wants him to do, we don't see Will seeing his death? I thought that was interesting. But I figured if you are willingly going to the land of the dead, you're ready to go, aren't you?
He also didn't need his death to lead him to the boat, because he had Lyra to lead him to the boat, and she was following her own death. So maybe they're playing it that way.
Yeah, that is right. That is right. Okay, that makes sense.
So as long as Lyra was following her own death, and he just follows her. Now, there could have been something, land of the dead physics-wise or something that could have kept him from being able to follow her completely, but they didn't do that. So, I mean, theoretically, not actual story wise.
Right.
But yeah.
No, yeah. Okay.
So
Oh God.
there's one topic left on the wheel. We'll black all of the other ones out so that it can only land on this one, or if it lands on any others, it still lands on this one. So spin the wheel one last time. It has landed on I love you, ... Just go. You're probably really mad at us podcast listeners for waiting this long in the podcast to talk about this. The reason why we did is because we wanted Holly to have clear eyes for as long in the podcast as we possibly could. And we're not gonna torture ourselves too much talking about this, because I think the scene says all it needs to say. And everybody on the internet has, I mean, if you don't express emotions of great sorrow watching this, then you aren't even human, and I don't know why you're listening to this podcast. So poor Holly here. Do you want to try and talk, or do you want me to just talk?
No, I do. I was gonna say, if you're watching, you got to see me start crying immediately once the wheel landed. So yeah, here we are. This is a moment. If we've been listening to us since the beginning, I have been probably teasing this moment as like one of the, I don't know, most heartbreaking, earth-shattering things I've ever read in my life. And then watching it was not any better. Let me tell you, watching it was just as hard. Wow. Yeah, I saw the boatman and immediately lost it. Like before, the scene even really begun. It is extremely hard for me to just deal with goodbyes in general. And the idea of leaving a manifestation of your soul on the shore so you can go and apologize to your friend for like what you did to like that, to his death. I mean, like on the one hand, I think what she's doing is the fact that she's willing to die to do this, I think makes her, there's something special about that. And I respect the heck out of it for her. What makes me so mad is that it never once occurred to her that doing this would mean this. I don't know why she was like, it's a little naive for her to think that she would just be able to just walk in there with Pan and just walk through the land of the dead without any consequences, even though she said she was prepared to die. It's like she really had no idea what dying meant for her and Pan. It seemed like she would have known that. She had seen, people get killed around her and their demons just like go into dust. I don't know what she was thinking. And I know a lot of people out there are really frustrated with Lyra for being really selfish. And I totally get that. And I feel this way too. And it's probably a gripe I have with I kind of complimented how they aged up the characters a little bit. Or at least they made the passage of time seem like greater because of how much older the actors look now. But that worked last week. But what doesn't work this week is that they're this naive, that they're this young and naive at this point. I'm sorry. Like that becomes a little bit more harder for me to swallow. So I do have a gripe with that. And it is really easy to just be so angry at Lyra for not thinking of Pan. And I mean, really, I started being angry with her at the beginning of this season, knowing this was coming. But at the beginning of episode 3, when she's being withholding about the dream, it was frustrating to me. Like she is already, it's like she knew, and she was already putting this distance and this wall up between her and Pan, so she wouldn't have to maybe make this easier for her. I don't know. Do you feel that way? Like I feel like she knew to a degree, but then in that last moment, it was like she was then she was like suddenly in denial about what that meant. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that are happening in this episode that are great bookends for this particular episode. At the very beginning, Pan says, "There's other people here who should have demons. They do not. What's going on with that?"
Yeah.
And she ignores him.
Yeah.
So she's in denial there.
Yeah.
And then she's in denial when she tries to put Pan on the boat as well. So her denial never went away.
Okay.
And I'm not a Pullman scholar by any stretch of the imagination, as Holly will testify. But I think one of the most beautiful things about this, I think what Pullman has done, and subsequently this adaptation has done as well, is it takes the lesson that everyone dies alone, and it puts it into a story that even, this person, this being that you've had with you, this part of you that you've had with you, that you've communed with, that you've talked with, that you've shared experiences with, emotions with, you cannot take that with you to death. Everyone dies alone. It's depressing. I know it's very depressing, but it's also very real. And I think that that's one of the greatest lessons that Pullman put in any of these books. And it's tragic and it's horrible. And so he actually made it in the most horrible way that it could. It'll make our deaths a lot easier because we don't have to deal with that, but to say that to say, no, not even Pan can go with you, is one of the most extraordinary ways to teach that lesson to people. I mean, God, I hope there's someone to hold my hand there when I take my last breath, but I'm still going to a place that they can't follow, and it's a horrible lesson to have to learn as a kid reading this book. I think it's a very wonderful lesson to learn as you reread this as an adult. Weird. I didn't mean to get all philosophical on this, but it's the best way that I can context it, because otherwise I'm on the floor bawling and you can't see me. All you'll see is my mic, and I'm down here and I'm screaming and I'm crying. You might see a fist shake every once in a while.
This is the moment when I think of His Dark Materials. This is the crucial moment that I think of all the time. So yeah, again, I've read it many times. Watching it is just as painful. There are a lot of differences. So like in the book, that Lyra is physically holding Pan a lot. We don't get that in the show because, actors holding CG stuff, it just doesn't work. So this part in the book, like, she's like physically trying to push him away, and he's like clawing to like grab onto her. It is so heartbreaking. But even then, even the way they did it here, where they
flipped the script and it made it just as impactful. Yeah,
they did, and we'll go more into that. And just he was a little bit more like, he's mad. He should be mad. Anyway, but just him like running and stretching at the end of the dock, and oh my God, I'm sorry, y'all. And the little house he would make, oh my God, it crushed me, and I was waiting for it. I was waiting for the agonizing scream, and it happened, and then that was just like another gut punch, and I'm just a puddle. I am a puddle of tears. This is not a corporal body. It is tears just like all melded together to make a body before you. This isn't real. This is an illusion of tears you were seeing in front of me, because I am just a mess. And it does not help that I had to say goodbye to my dog just like at the end of June of this year. So yeah, all of that was hitting super, super hard for me. And I probably cried more in the last 2 days than I have all year because of this moment. So,
well, I'm sorry
I'm
to
really
put you
glad.
through this.
It's okay. You know what? I'm really glad the rest of the world can suffer with me now, and suffer with us book readers who have known about this and have had to deal. Welcome to our pain. We are all trauma bonded together because of Pan and Lyra. So
that we are. I love one point that you brought up, and then we'll let this go
Yeah.
and we'll move on because we have silly things to do yet, like another what's worse question. But
Oh no.
yeah, try to lighten up for that. At any rate, I will say this one point that you brought up is how this is such a huge moment in the series, and I brought up in our musical analysis why it was so important to use the main theme was that very reason. The main theme was used as the boat is going away from the dock and all of that. The separation is starting to happen. And you don't give that to a Lyra theme. You don't give that to a Land of the Dead theme. You must give that to a main theme simply because it is one of the largest story points in the entirety of the series for certain. So I just wanted to say that, and now I'm going to make it awful for Holly by doing another what's worse.
What's worse?
Okay.
So, folks, we have been asking you to submit your feedback to us. We've been asking you to submit your 3 words to us. We've been asking you to submit your what's worst scenarios for Holly and I to argue, because quite frankly, it's tough to make them up. So we'd rather you do. We'd rather farm the work out to you. And we got one, which we are going to argue now. Let's see. Now, you read the question first last time, or did I?
Oh, I get to read the question now.
Oh, you're reading the question now.
Yeah.
So this one is from HTracy084 on Twitter. It's our friend Holly, who's been a loyal listener, that's a double L, to the podcast for a couple of seasons now, and we really appreciate. She's going to give us lots of feedback later on as well. But she submitted this what's worst scenario. Holly, it's your turn to ask the question. So read hers, and then I will choose an answer here.
Okay, Matt, what's worse, having to be separated from Pan or realizing that in trying to save your child, you brought her would-be killers the resources they need to do it?
Pretty serious. It's a pretty serious damn question. I could be really mean to you, Holly, and make you argue. Well, I don't guess it matters which side I make you argue. This is going to be really mean to you anyway. So I am going to say that realizing that in trying to save your child, you brought her would-be killers the resources that they need to do it. Knucklehead. What? That damn locket. That locket that you've had since season 2. When did you get that locket? When did you get the hair for that locket? I don't know. We don't have any answers to that. The only thing we have. What's that?
Well, she got the hair when she was sleeping, probably.
Well, we know that from certain sources. But why have the locket around your neck before a full season before? That's what I'm saying.
The book doesn't even answer that question, Matt.
That's what I'm saying. When did she put the locket on? How long was it? There's no answers here. So why in the world would you bring anything of your daughters with you if you were going to go kill the enemy? Why give them any chance? That's definitely worse. That's knuckleheaded. Not nearly as knuckleheaded as Lord Roke letting his lodestone resonator break inexplicably while just taking a ride in intention craft. What the hell is that about? Anyway, what you got here, Holly? Why is the other worse? Sorry.
I mean, do I need to explain it? You just had to watch me cry for 10 minutes as we talked about it. I know you cried for 10 minutes when you watched it. I really don't even have to make an argument here. We all just suffered through the trauma. Just rewind past 5 minutes, and that's your answer right there. Like, that's it.
I'm forced to put this on the poll, but if you don't vote for Holly on this one, if you do not vote that it's worse to be separated from Pan, then I don't know who you are. Please stop listening to the podcast. 3 words is next. Oh my goodness. Neither of us have filled out 3 words for these episodes, Holly. Whatever are we going to do? I will give my 3 words for season 3, episode 3, and that is angels are dumb. All angels are dumb. Alarbus is dumb for getting self-caught and killed by Asriel. Bathalmos is dumb for just dropping in and rubbing it in that I could have helped you at any time, but I chose not to. I was just watching from afar. Oh, wait, now you need me again. Oh, I don't go to the land of the dead. That's beneath me. See ya. Angels are dumb. Those are my 3 words. What are your 3 words for this first of 2 episodes, Holly?
My 3 words are mother knows best. Because Marisa's the only one that interested in still trying to save her daughter.
We've got to come up with another set for episode 4. I mean, I don't want to steal from anybody. I think I will say pipes in hell. What was with all the industrialness of all the land of the dead? What do you need pipes for? Are they pumping the water into the divide that's between this suburb and the land of the dead? Everybody's dead, well, except for Lyra and Will. So do you need to drink water? What's the purpose of having pipes? Is it steam pipes? Is it to create the fog effect between the dock and wherever it is that they're going? Yep. What's with the pipes? Pipes in hell. That's my 3 words.
My 3 words are you stupid girl, because I'm just mad at Lyra. I'm mad at her for doing this to Pan. She's a stupid girl. She's stupid. I'm mad. I'm sad.
All right.
I'm late with my 3 words this week, but I mean, my brain is broken. I can't think anymore.
Everybody's brain is broken from this, except for Holly H. Tracy 084, who came up with 3 words. It's a triple S.
Triple S.
Yeah. Soul snatching sadness.
Yeah.
Ouch. 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 That hurts. That hurts. We've got more feedback from her coming up in just a second.
Oi, can we get the feedback out of the monitors, please?
So, we are in the feedback section. First of all, I want to give a shout out to Ruth Wilson Source on Twitter, who is all about Wilson on Twitter, for retweeting a lot of our podcast stuff. Thank you very much for that, doing that. We really appreciate it. And we have to review last week's What's Worse questions, Holly. None of this will make you any happier than you have been this entire podcast. First of all, what's worse, losing your love or flying away from the one person that love assigned you to stay with? Again, we're back to stupid angels. This one, I believe that you argued disrespecting love's wish, and I argued losing your love. Is that correct? Or was it the other way around?
I don't remember.
At any rate, losing your love won 58.3% to 41.7%. 1,400 votes total on that particular podcast, or in that particular poll on the 100 Twitter. Also on the 100 Twitter, 1,200 votes on the 100 Twitter. This has never happened before, Holly. It's just never happened. What's worse, being threatened by Father Gomez or just plain being Fra Pavel? Me and you tried to boost this to get at least, another 100 votes out of this so that we could break this tie, but it didn't happen. A perfect tie, 50%. That's never happened on this podcast before. 50% apiece for being threatened by Father Gomez or being threatened or just being Fra Pavel, being exactly the same. We're both failures, Holly, or we're both victors. Which way would you prefer to look at it?
I feel like a failure after this week. I don't know. I'm just so down. I'm so sad. Maybe let's win. We're winners. Well, we'll be winners because I'm down. So
we have to pick ourselves back up.
Yes.
When you fall off the horse and all that stuff. So we have a dissertation here from Holly, who is at H Tracy 084. Giving us pretty much catching us up from the last week, the first 2 episodes as well, saying, since I didn't get to comment last week, the intro credits are gorgeous. Do we have any idea who designed or made them? Yes, we do. We know who made the first ones for the first season, and there's no reason to believe that they haven't continued to do so because they look exactly the same. The company is called Elastic, and they do deserve all the praise, as Holly says. Here's something that we've been talking about all podcast. Somehow it got into my subconscious brain, I guess, as I was putting this feedback in from Holly from at H3E04. I think it's weird how Asriel is suddenly calling Mrs. C Marisa instead of Marisa. Again, we've got that on the poll, ladies and gentlemen. Look on the poll. Is it Marisa or Marisa? Or is it just whatever way James McAvoy decides to say it on any given shooting day? Holly continues. She made You're Enjoying This, Aren't You? Still the Same Man. That's toxic in terms of the two of them. I think her change is genuine where Lyra is concerned. In the book, I find her motivations a little more ambiguous. This week convinced me that she may be going about it all wrong with the kidnapping and transporting her in a box to then drug her to sleep for 3 years. So 3 years, maybe in the books, or maybe she's just being funny about the fact that the kids have aged so much. I'm not Holly, that's what you think, right? That she's just...
I thought that 3 years was just like sarcasm, but
okay. Because Will did say in these particular episodes at some point that he'd been searching for her for months. But they did. Roger, he definitely had 3 years in between shots. And he is now an NBA player, that's for sure.
Oh no.
He's been drafted in the European League already, and he'll soon be playing for the Phoenix Suns.
It's so funny because I've been crying this whole episode about us going to the land of the dead, but in that time I had already forgotten about how much I don't like Coulter, Roger, and the land of the dead. Okay, so my spirits are back up because now I think that's funny. Okay. But I agree with Holly though on her on what she's saying about Mrs. Coulter and all of that stuff. I agree with her 100%.
Holly continues, of course, no one can blame Lyra for not believing her, even if she did still wanting to run. I wouldn't believe Mrs. Coulter either, but she truly did give everything up to save her. It's not enough, of course. Nothing will be. But she just wants to keep her kid alive, no matter how much she ignored her until the events of this series began. Speaking of, I'd like to get more info on this Asriel affair, more than last season's quick discussion with Carlos, and more than what she tells Asriel in one of these 2 eps. Okay. And then, there's still some spaces to be in there. Be filled in there, I suppose. But anyway, she continues, the locket, obviously we didn't find out it's the locket she holds Lyra's hair in, but Asriel made a comment, you still wear this. She didn't wear it until sometime in season 2, but it's fine. I don't remember the origin of the locket from the books. Doesn't mean it's not there. Was it something Asriel gave her? When? The locket itself, I don't know. I don't think we know. It's not mentioned until book 3 when Amma sees it and sees Mrs. Coulter put the hair in it. And I've got the quote from the book, if Holly will indulge me by reading it.
Okay, so from chapter 4 of the Amber Spyglass, Amma and the Bats, it says, eventually that stopped. And then the woman did a curious thing. She took a pair of scissors and trimmed the girl's hair, holding her head this way and that to see the best effect. She took one dark blonde curl and put it in a little gold locket that she had around her own neck. Amma could tell why. She was going to work some further magic with it, but the woman held it to her lips first. Oh, this was strange.
This was strange. There it is. Dun, dun, dun.
Stuff.
That's the best origin story that we have for the locket. That's the only thing that we know. And that doesn't really spoil anything. We still don't know when Asriel gave it to her or what it had in it when he did, at least as far as the television show goes. Because we didn't see her cut any hair in the first episode, right?
No.
I love TV Mrs. C. She doesn't try to justify her actions. She's clear that she was/is horrible, but Lyra matters, and she's willing to be humiliated if Asriel will help, which is a huge pivot for her, yet he seems to be determined to prove he doesn't care at all. She is also a terrible human being, but I think it's clear the TV version of her actually woke up and realized she loved Lyra, no matter how much she didn't fit her image of who she believed she should be. That part, last part, obviously took some time. The book Mrs. C's motives seem a little more ambiguous. Father President McPhail and Mrs. Coulter, when she says they're intertwined, can we take that to mean all the evil that they've done in the name of the authority? Or do you think it indicates something more? Because gross, he's obviously lusted after her for some time. Yeah, I think it's just about the crime stuff, especially with the line about the abstinence.
I would maybe, venture to say that she probably has tried to use some of her womanly ways to manipulate him in the past. And I think we do see some of that in season 1. And I think there probably was just kind of consistent part of their relationship and how she manipulated him without actually going that far.
I'm thinking of a line in the book. Mrs. C asks McPhail and company why she'd ever turn her daughter over to a bunch of men obsessed with sexuality. And she's right. They're all bonkers, and McPhail is a self-flagellating, lecherous little lizard. That's Triple L. Meanwhile, I do really like Will Keane. How can you not? It's a weird, it's a weird sentence, but yeah, I mean, it's exactly right. It's like, oh, what a creep McPhail is. Will Keane's really cool, man. What a good actor.
We totally get it, Holly. We totally get it. Totally get it.
Holly continues, Mrs. C truly tried everything she can with Lyra just in the past 4 episodes, not including all her ways of, quote, helping before this. She tried it herself in the cave. She begged Will to help them. She went to Asriel. She went to the Magisterium. When none of that worked, she confessed to murder so that she could expose McPhail, risking being executed or imprisoned forever to get people to see who they're dealing with. From the sound of it, it seems like she'll do anything to thwart this bomb. She's not so clearly on Lyra's side in the books. I love this. Yeah, so in doing all of this, she's just ensured that Father President McPhail is going to use her as the reason or as the fuel for the bomb. That's the problem I have with it. So that's awful. Of course, we still got Lord Roke out there, Holly. We can assume that he's probably going to try and help her, right?
I would think so, yeah. They were kind of working together, so.
Yeah. Holly continues. Pan and Lyra in the end. I don't even know what to say about this. The wee whimpers and his sad little face. I'm not sure I'm forgiving Lyra after this.
Right? Same.
Same. Holly says affirmative to that. Holly says Holly is affirmative of Holly. Okay. Do Mrs. Coulter and her demons seem more in league with one another than before? Yeah. I don't know, but it doesn't seem that there's been any kind of a problem. I think that while they've had issues, I guess maybe they do seem more in league now. Maybe the use of the intention craft was only possible because they were able to get more in league, right?
That, and maybe the monkey's just feeling a lot better about everything because he got to whack her in the head with a rock last week. So, he's feeling good. No, but there was a very subtle moment that we did not actually talk about in the podcast. It's when she's already locked up. She's like tied to the chair, and they do like share a little look, and she kind of goes, and Marisa just goes, and it kind of like gives him a little nod. It was like they had a little conversation, and she was acknowledging it. It was a little small moment, like they were hatching schemes.
Holly continues. Mrs. C has a lot of tells about her true feelings for Lyra. She flinches in episode 2 when Father Gomez goes to enter the chapel. She touches the locket in front of McPhail. She even flinches when Asriel touches the locket. I get the feeling between all the choking and jokes when Asriel binds Marissa's hands that their relationship was probably dangerously passionate and maybe consensually violent. I think,
Absolutely.
yeah.
100%. Absolutely. Yes. Agree. Hard agree.
Yeah. And then Asriel saying, why can't you be who I want you to be? Just canceled out any redeeming qualities he once had when he was more grounded in reality.
Yes.
Absolutely. To
I
me,
also
that killed
changed
him
my
as a
mind on
character. I
Ezreal.
could care less about what happens to him now.
Yeah.
Him saying that.
Yeah.
For sure.
He officially sucks now. Like there's no turning back. I mean, if we didn't already hate him for killing Roger, I mean, like he shouldn't have had as many passes as he has had.
As he's gotten.
Honestly.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Lyra saying Mrs. Coulter was holding her and she'd never been held before. Oh, and this poor kid. I also appreciate how Will saw the chapel as a place of trauma for Lyra and told her they didn't have to go in. It's easy to get caught up in the great scenes that came from it and forget that she was in a drug-induced sleep for 3 years. So the thing that I want to say about this to you, H. Tracy 084 Holly, is this. You cannot say poor kid and then say that you never forgive her. It's just not possible. You've got to keep your take straight. Either Lyra is a demon who separates herself from a demon, two different spellings of demon, or she's a poor kid. So which is she, Holly? H Tracy 084. Which is she? I ask the question now. I'm just kidding. Thank you very much for all of that wonderful feedback. Really loved it. Thanks so much for sending all that stuff in. We have a YouTube comment also from our friend Priscilla TV.
Oh, Priscilla TV. Oh, I know her. Coach, I know her. She's part of the Bustin' Blockbusters podcast. She does the Lord of the Rings episodes with you, man.
I thought I blocked you from this Zoom.
Oh, come on. Let me read Priscilla's comment.
Fine.
Priscilla for TV. She's got a great YouTube channel, by the way. Just search it out. YouTube.com/@PriscillaTV1 on YouTube. She says, hi, Matt and Holly. Just passing by to say hello and how jealous I am that you have a tiny wheel of topics that actually spins. How crazy is that?
It's so crazy. It's so tiny.
Ours spins, doesn't it, Matt? Coach, get out of here.
Bye, Holly.
Bye. He was nicer that time. Less scary.
Less scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. He tends to get that way as the night goes on.
Okay.
Okay. So, folks, if you want more great feedback reading from Coach Trolloc, let us know. Or if you want him to never, ever show up again, let us know. How do you do that? You send tweets to @TheDustPodcast on Twitter. You can send Hive's social messages or Mastodon boosts messages, whatever that is, on one of the 17 billion servers that they have by seeking out Matt's audio blog, MATTS audio blog. You can send emails to mattsaudioblog@gmail.com. Guess what that spelling is? MATTS audioblog@gmail.com. Or you can leave comments on our website posts. Guess what that spelling is? mattsaudioblog.com. Or you can leave comments on our YouTube page. Well, it's not our YouTube page. It's the Double P Media's YouTube page, youtube.com/C/the word double, the letter P, the word media. That is how you reach them. Or you can use their handy little handle, which is youtube.com/@double P Media. Or you can use the following spellings for Twitter: Hive, social, and for Instagram, that's double, the word double, the letters PHQ. That stands for Podcast Headquarters. Again, that's for Hive, for Twitter, and for Instagram. You can use that same spelling for Facebook, facebook.com/the word double, the letters PHQ. You can find everything that Double P Media does also at their website, doublepmedia.com. We want you to subscribe to the YouTube. We want you to like our video. We want you to leave comments on our video, because what we found out over the course of this year is that 2 million minutes of people watching Double P Media videos still only get you a quarter pounder with cheese. So Bubba needs more. He needs you to like. He needs you to subscribe. He needs you to watch all of the videos. It's not like he can fire us because we're on our second to last podcast for this feed anyway. But he can fire me in other projects that I'm doing.
Like Boston Blockbusters podcast. Please like and subscribe.
Coach, go away. All right. Holly, anything else before we get into the book spoilers?
No, I'm glad we've made it past this point. That's all I got.
Don't worry. I've got more torture coming for you.
Yeah.
Book spoilers are coming up, folks. If you don't want to be spoiled about anything that happens in the last 2 weeks of this series, or happens all in one day, this Sunday, if you live in the BBC, if you live in the UK and have a BBC iPlayer. If you don't want to know any of that stuff, then we'll say goodbye for now. Book spoilers coming up after Deborah just repeats all of the information that I just spent 5 minutes giving you.
You're listening to The Dust, a His Dark Materials podcast. Tweet the podcast at The Dust Podcast. Send emails to mattsaudioblog@gmail.com and find all back episodes and other information at mattsaudioblog.com. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Part of Double P Media, doublepmedia.com.
You're still here. Why are you still here? It must be because you've read the Amber Spyglass. Maybe you've even read all of the Book of Dust series that's available currently, which is La Belle Sauvage and The Secret Commonwealth. Is that correct, Holly?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Okay. And maybe you've read those too. And maybe you can school me on some of that stuff because I haven't read those. But if you're a TV person who just wants to find out what's going to happen on the TV show before it happens on the TV show, I'm actually okay with that too. It's just if you don't want to be here and don't want to find out and you're still here, then I'm going to ask you to go away. That's the only people that I'm going to ask to go away because I try to be inclusive, but you know, everybody's got their limits. So here's what I didn't like. I've got a list, Holly.
I see.
I did not like the way that somehow episode 4 drug out and out and out until the last 5 minutes, which are heartbreaking. And yet we learned nothing. I did like the Lyra and her death scene, but to have that guy lead them into the room where they learned about having to see your death, we didn't get any of the hut stuff with the dinner, with the music, with the celebration, or any of that stuff that might have been able to be included if we'd have just moved along a little bit better in the prior episode and put some of this stuff in the prior episode, or if we had 10 episodes where we could spend more time here. I don't like the way this is being adapted. I don't like the way that they're leaving the Gallivespians out of the land of the dead. I don't like that the dragonflies were never there. I hate that Tialis isn't there. I have zero, and I know you said you like Lord Roke and you can invest in him. I'm not invested in him because I can't trust whether he actually broke his lodestone resonator or not. So I'm not invested. I have zero reason to invest in any of these Gallivespians. Show me them caring for the dragonflies. Show me them experiencing what they experience in the Land of the Dead in the future. And then I'm invested in. Don't show me them flashing Skylab solar panels as wings.
They don't really do much in the Land of the Dead except
the dragonflies die.
The dragonflies die. That's it. Like that's kind of it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
but it invests you in the fact that they care so much for them.
Yeah, I guess, but like that's it. Like it's again, it's not really they don't do anything that pushes the story forward. They die in there too. The Gallivespians die in there. They don't even survive it. Right? They died. So Again, it's unnecessary. We wouldn't have enough time. If we wouldn't have had enough time to develop them anyway as characters, to get to know them, to even care about them. Really, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
Again, it'll be easier to know once we kind of get through the next couple episodes too, and once we get through the Land of the Dead, because the only thing that really stands out about the dragonflies was that like once they get everybody in the Land of the Dead on their side and they're all going in the same direction, I like the imagery of the dragonflies being like the only little bit of light in the Land of the Dead that everybody's kind of following.
Yeah.
So I would miss that. So other than that though, like there's really not even a reason to have down there. We needed like the dragonflies down there, not even really the Gallivespians. Like again, I'm not being picky. I think they're hitting the right things. They hit the emotional beat for Pan and Lyra that they needed to get that for me. And they did. I'm devastated. So they got that right. And that's kind of all I'm worried about.
I'm sorry to be an Asriel, but why can't this story just be what I want it to be?
Oh my God. I don't know. Money.
The other thing, I did like the way that, because I know that you said this was very upsetting with the thinking about the way that it's portrayed in the books with, her having to push Pan away and all of that stuff. But I did love the flip of the script because it also incorporates that separation that is in between them in the secret Commonwealth. So it worked really well in that way. It was still
a very
dagger to the heart, but man, it's cool that they set that up already. And even in, what was the line where he said, where she says, you always used to be on my side, side. And he says, I thought I was by your side. Yeah. Really good stuff there. So love all of that.
Yeah. They've been actually doing a good job of kind of teasing this out, really starting in season 2, very subtly, like so subtle I can't tell you exactly which moments. I just remember seeing the seeds there, maybe even some in season 1, but they were really hitting it hard every episode so far this season with her withholding her dream information, just not wanting to tell Pan everything and like keeping those secrets from him. She's really already like betraying his trust. So it is a betrayal. And okay, that question, you brought it up earlier, and then we didn't talk about it much. So I didn't know how to interpret that question. When she asks her death, will he understand? Do you think she's talking about Pan, or she's talking about the boatman? You thought she was talking about Pan?
I thought she was talking about Pan.
Right. So that if she is talking about Pan, that makes me really angry that she's just choosing to ignore and not talk to him, and like not tell him what's going on. I thought maybe it was like about the boatman, like understanding. I don't know. But again, it all just sets up everything super great for the Secret Commonwealth with their.
The other thing that was really weird about that was when the boatman said one of your party won't be allowed on, or won't be allowed to take the journey. Travel. And she kind of questioned which, like she thought it was going to be Will or something.
Yeah. So
then I was wondering if she was asking the death about will understand. Maybe she was planning on going on her own, just her and Pan.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. It was kind of hard. It was kind of hard to read what that was, like what that question, who that question was supposed to be about.
Agreed.
And I guess you can argue multiple interpretations, but yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't have enough faith that they'll ever make that clear. That it's just it was just out there.
Yeah. Yeah. It was so hard. Hi, Bean.
Okay, so no seed pods so far.
No, but she was drinking out of a seed pod, though, right? That was the cup.
Seemed awful small.
It could be. Yeah. Maybe it was just a small one. It wasn't fully
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. They have no mechanical use for smaller ones
Mhm.
if they wouldn't support them, so they use them for other things.
Mhm.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Um, or maybe they are smaller. Maybe I just misread that in the book. I just thought that they were big enough to support, their weight, and they kind of anchored all four legs into
Or
them.
2 and 2. I don't know.
Or
It's
two and
again,
two.
it's
Yeah.
so weird. It's so weird the way they're described in the books. It's really hard for my brain to like picture it. I know Bean struggles too. Sorry if y'all can hear the cat who needs attention. It's cat o'clock over here.
It is cat o'clock.
This is the time they come and interrupt the podcast. So anyway, yeah. No seed pods yet. There have to be. There have to be seed pods.
The other weird thing, and the thing that I think disturbed me a little bit was I didn't really think that we were in Mulefa yet when we saw it, because I was expecting more of the big clumps of trees. I was expecting to see the roads, saw zero roads.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't know if that was just meant to be so that it would be this big dramatic reveal that Atal is there and saying hello, so that book readers would not suspect that they were there yet, or what. But it just felt kind of clumsy in that respect. It's like, those are the first descriptions you get of Mulefa from Pullman, is through her eyes. And
Maybe
those are the
Mary.
descriptions you get.
Yeah, and maybe we don't see roads because Mary's just like out in the boonies of the Mulefa world. She's not near. She's not near like the city, the Mulefa city.
Well, yeah, okay.
I don't know. I'm making excuses.
Atal would have to be quite a wanderer then, because they weren't that far from her village, were they? Well,
Yeah,
it's
I
kind
don't
of hard
know.
to tell because they move so fast over the roads, so you can't
Yeah.
tell how far away they are from any of the villages.
It's too early to tell for me to start making like assumptions right now. I'll give it another episode, another like good chunk of time with Mary Malone before coming to any decisions on how I feel about it.
I do love Mary Malone. She hasn't had, unfortunately, Simone Kirby hasn't had a whole lot to do.
No, I
Until
know.
just a couple scenes this episode. I guess the one thing that we mentioned last week was, of course, that that talk that she had with those girls about coming into your own and being yourself and all of that stuff. It's very good practice for the talk that she's going to have with Lyra and Will. So, or at least with Lyra, I guess. So, that's good. And here you get the reveal of the Mulefa. Now we're at a place with Mrs. Coulter where she's either got to crap or get off the pot, or Lord Roke has to get off the pot as far as the Magisterium is concerned, right? So they can do just a really tight thing there, and they could split more of it up between, maybe the first thing we need to do is have Will lose his portion that can't go across, and it show up with Pan. Like I said, you can't put that at the end of this episode because it destroys all the drama. But you can put it at the beginning of the next one.
Yeah, well, and we don't see Will's demon for sure, but like all we know is that he experiences the same kind of agonizing pain that she does.
Right, but we
though they don't
also
show
do
it.
know that Pan gets a new friend on the other side.
Yeah, but we don't know that, like, and they don't know that until they get to the other side.
Yeah, but we're an outside. Well, okay.
Right. I wasn't expecting to see Will's demon this episode.
I think some people were, and that surprised me. Because if she's experiencing the pain, he should be experiencing it at the same time.
I think they should have shown that. I think they should have shown that pain for him. I don't think we needed to see much else. I think that's going to be a great surprise for TV only people, that like, oh, now that they went through this together and they're going to come back through, Will's going to have a demon that he didn't have before. So yeah. I think that's going to be a nice, fun surprise. Maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
I know you were talking about Mrs. Coulter, and I feel like with where we are with Mary Malone and where we are with Mrs. Coulter, like we need to maybe slow down from Mrs. Coulter. Like maybe the next episode is just Land of the Dead and just Mary Malone. And I think we could do that for an episode to kind of like catch us up, at least catch her up to maybe what's kind of going on with the rest of us and then pick back up later. I mean, it is Ruth Wilson and they probably want to keep her in every episode, even a little bit. So
Yeah.
But yeah, they do need to slow down her stuff.
And let Mary Malone catch up. Yeah.
I feel like at everything out, like there's just so many big events that are about to happen, like back to back to back to back to back to back to back. And is a problem I have with the book where I think it kind of glazes or quickly glances over these big events where I don't really think very much about like the actual battle that's happening, because that's really that's gonna be happening as they come out of the world of the dead. Because I feel like there's just so many like moments and things that need to happen, and so many big things that happen, like boom 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 boom, that you don't really get to spend enough time in each of them, and you just have to like one thing has to happen so the next thing can happen, then the next thing. So I don't know, that's where we're at, and I think that's why I'm just kind of like not in general really picky about the changes, because as long as it's feeling true, then I'm good with it, and I still feel that way.
Understood. One last what's worse question, not for you or me,
Okay, good,
but for our listeners.
good night.
What's worse, Pan, the thing that happened between Pan and Lyra in these episodes, or the thing that will happen between Will and Lyra at the very end? What's worse? We want to hear from you. Tweet us, email us, Hive, Mastodon, whatever it is you do. Comment on videos, on websites, and whatever. You've got all the information. We don't need to give it to you anymore. Final thought, Holly, and then we're gone.
I'm glad we're past this. I'm so glad we're past this.
This podcast was strange.
Mm.
That death is strange.